What happens when a trapped billionaire heiress meets a mysterious man with a deadly past? This isn't your typical romance story. Hey there, romance lovers. Tonight we dive into a world where every choice has a cost and every moment matters. Let's dig in. The crystal chandeliers of the Metropolitan Museum cast fractured light across the marble floor, each shard reflecting the hollow smiles of New York's elite. Celeste Ashworth pressed her champagne flute to her lips without drinking, the bitter taste of pretense already coating her tongue. 28, she had perfected the art of looking engaged while feeling utterly empty. The Monet acquisition was simply divine. Mrs. Pemberton gushed beside her, diamonds glittering at her throat like trapped stars. Your grandfather would be so proud. Celeste's smile never wavered, though her grandfather's shadow seemed to darken every corner of the room. Dead for 6 months, yet his iron grip on her life remained unbroken. The trust fund, the arranged marriage to Senator Morrison's son, the life mapped out in boardrooms and legal documents, leaving no space for her own desires. "Excuse me," she murmured, slipping away from the cluster of socialites. The museum's restoration wing offered sanctuary. Scaffolding created geometric shadows on the walls, and the scent of turpentine mixed with aged wood provided relief from the cloying perfumes of the gala. Celeste kicked off her Louboutin heels, feeling the cool marble against her bare feet. "Running away from your own party?" The voice came from the darkness beyond the scaffolding. A man emerged, paint-stained fingers wrapped around a coffee cup instead of champagne. His dark hair was disheveled, stubble shadowing his jaw.
Pass.
And his paint-splattered shirt suggested he belonged here about as much as a wolf in a kennel. "Are you?" Celeste asked, though something about his presence made her pulse quicken rather than alarm her. "Marcus Kane, night security. Also the guy who's been watching you look miserable for the past hour." Stayed. Her with unsettling intensity. "You're Celeste Ashworth. Guilty as charged. This must be nice, having everything handed to you on a silver platter." The words stung because they weren't entirely wrong, but they missed the crucial truth. "You have no idea what my life is like." Marcus stepped closer, and she caught the scent of paint and something darker, more dangerous. "Enlighten me, princess. What's so hard about being worth more than most small countries? Try living in a cage made of gold. Try having every breath you take monitored, every choice made for you by dead men and greedy lawyers." Her voice cracked despite her attempts to maintain composure. "Try being told you'll marry a man you've never loved because it serves the family legacy." Something shifted in Marcus's expression. The mockery faded, replaced by recognition of genuine pain. "When's the wedding?" 6 weeks. "And what do you want?" The question hit her like a physical blow. When was the last time anyone had asked? What she wanted? "I want to disappear. I want to be someone else, somewhere else. I want to matter for who I am, not what I inherit." Marcus set down his coffee cup, paint-stained fingers reaching toward her face. "What if I told you I could help you disappear?" "I'd say you're either insane or dangerous. Both, probably." His thumb brushed against her cheek and she realized she was crying. "But I'm also serious. There's a way out, Celeste. If you're brave enough to take it." The sound of footsteps echoed from the main gallery. Her security detail, no doubt searching for their wayward charge. "Miss Ashworth," a voice called out. Marcus grabbed her hand. "Meet me tomorrow night, the old subway tunnel entrance on 86th Street, midnight. If you want your freedom, that's where you'll find it." He melted back into the shadows as her bodyguard appeared, concern creasing his features. "There you are, miss. Your fiancé's looking for you." Celeste slipped her shoes back on, her hands still tingling where Marcus had touched her. She walked back toward the glittering cage of her life. His words echoed in her mind. Freedom. The word tasted foreign on her tongue. In her purse, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Trust me." The subway tunnel reeked of rust and forgotten dreams. Celeste descended the crumbling steps, her designer coat pulled tight against the October chill. Above, the city hummed with life. But down here, only shadows and secrets survived. Marcus waited by the abandoned platform. It's no longer the mysterious security guard, but something far more dangerous. His leather jacket hung open, revealing scars that crisscrossed his chest like a map of violence. "You came. I said I would." She kept her distance, suddenly aware of how isolated they were. What is this place? Old transit line shut down in the 80s. Perfect for people who don't want to be found. His eyes reflected the single flickering bulb overhead. How badly do you want out, Celeste? Badly enough to meet a stranger in an abandoned tunnel at midnight. Marcus pulled out a manila envelope, thick with documents. New identity, passport, driver's license, birth certificate, everything you need to become someone else. Celeste's hands trembled as she opened it. The photo was hers, but the name read Claire Montgomery. How did you get this? I have resources, people who owe me favors. He stepped closer, and she could see the weight of unspoken history in his expression. But it comes with a price. Money? I can pay whatever you want, not money. A favor, to be collected later. Warning bells screamed in her mind, but the documents in her hands felt like salvation. What kind of favor? The kind you don't ask questions about. Marcus reached out, his fingers tracing the fake ID. Your grandfather wasn't just a businessman. Celeste, he had connections to some very dangerous people. People who are now asking questions about certain missing assets. The tunnel seemed to close in around her. What assets? 50 million in bearer bonds, hidden in a safety deposit box that disappeared the day he died. Marcus's voice was deadly quiet. They think you know where it is. I don't know anything about any bonds. Maybe, but they don't believe that, which means you're a target, princess. Whether you take my offer or not. Sound echoed from the tunnel entrance. Footsteps, measured and purposeful. Marcus grabbed her arm, pulling her deeper into the shadows. They found us, he whispered. Your security detail? Celeste shook her head, terror freezing her blood. I came alone. 3 men emerged from the darkness, their faces hidden, but their intent clear. The man in front spoke with a Russian accent thick as winter fog. Miss Ashworth. You have something that belongs to my employer. I don't know what you're talking about. Your grandfather made promises before he died. Debts that must be paid. He pulled out a gun, its chrome surface catching the light. The bonds, Miss Ashworth. Where are they? Marcus stepped between them, his body tense as a coiled spring. Doesn't know anything, Volkov? The Russian smiled, revealing gold teeth. Ah, Marcus Kane. Still playing hero, I see. Your sister thought the same thing. Something dark and terrible passed over Marcus's face. Leave her out of this. Too late. For that, don't you think? Volkov's laugh was like breaking glass. She paid for your mistakes, just like Miss Ashworth will pay for her grandfather's. The tunnel exploded into motion. Marcus lunged forward as Volkov raised his weapon. Celeste pressed herself against the end wall, documents scattering as gunshots echoed off the concrete walls. When the echoes died, 2 of the Russians lay motionless on the platform. Volkov was gone, vanished into the labyrinth of tunnels. Marcus knelt beside one of the bodies, blood seeping from a wound in his shoulder. We have to go, he said through gritted teeth. Now, Celeste helped him to his feet, her hands slick with his blood. Who was that? What did he mean about your sister? Questions later. Survival now. Marcus pulled her toward a service tunnel. Your old life just ended, Celeste. There's no going back. As they stumbled through the darkness, Celeste realized she was no longer just running from an unwanted marriage. She was running for her life, tied to a man whose past was soaked in violence and secrets. Behind them, Volkov's voice echoed through the tunnels. You cannot run forever, little bird. The debts will be paid. The safe house sat on the edge of nowhere, a weathered cabin surrounded by pine trees that whispered secrets in the mountain wind. Celeste watched Marcus stitch his shoulder wound in the bathroom mirror, his jaw clenched against the pain. Let me help, she said, but he shook his head. I've had worse. 3 weeks of hiding had stripped away the pretenses between them. She'd learned that Marcus painted in his spare time, creating dark masterpieces that spoke of loss and rage. Discovered that beneath her privileged exterior lay a sharp intelligence and surprising resilience. Tell me about your sister, Celeste said as he emerged from the bathroom, his shoulder bound in fresh bandages. Marcus poured 2 glasses of whiskey, his movements careful. Her name was Sophia. She was 23 when they killed her. Da-da. Russians. I used to work for them. Money laundering mostly. Clean operations. Nothing violent. He handed her the glass, their fingers brushing. Sophia found out. Threatened to go to the FBI unless I got out. Celeste felt something cold settle. In her stomach? What happened? I tried to leave. Volkov made it clear that wasn't an option. Marcus's voice was hollow, so I made a deal. One last job, and Sophia would be safe. But she wasn't. They killed her anyway. Made it look like a robbery gone. Wrong. His gray eyes met hers, and she saw the guilt that aided him like acid. I've spent the last 5 years hunting them down, one by one. Volkov is the last. The confession hung between them like a blade. Celeste set down her untouched whiskey, finally understanding the true cost of her freedom. That's why you helped. Me, not kindness. Revenge. At first, yes. Marcus moved closer, and she could see her reflection in his eyes. Your grandfather laundered money for them. The bonds Volkov mentioned. Their payment for an arms deal that went bad. When your grandfather died without delivering them, his debts became yours. So I'm bait. You were. His hand cupped her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone. But things changed. The space between them crackled with tension that had been building for weeks. Celeste knew she should pull away, should demand answers to the questions that multiplied like shadows. Instead, she leaned into his touch. What things? You know what things? When he kissed her, it tasted of whiskey and desperation. Fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer despite every rational thought, screaming warnings. They were wrong for each other in every way that mattered. She was light, he was darkness. She was hope, he was vengeance. But when his lips moved to her throat, when his hands tangled in her hair, none of that seemed to matter. The sound of engines cut through the mountain silence like a knife. Marcus pulled away, instantly alert. How many? Celeste peered through the window. 3 black SUVs wound up the narrow road. We need to run. No. Marcus grabbed a rifle. From the closet, his expression deadly calm. Running ends now. Out. Marcus. There are too many of them. Then we better make sure they don't all leave. He checked the weapon, muscle memory guiding his movements. There's a service road behind the cabin. Take the motorcycle keys from the kitchen drawer. I'm not leaving you. Yes, you are. Kissed her again, hard and desperate. Because if you don't, Sophia's death meant nothing. Your grandfather's sins win, and I love you too much to let that happen. The words hit her like a physical blow. Love. In the midst of violence and deception, something real had grown between them. Marcus, go. Now. The first gunshot shattered the front window. Celeste grabbed the keys, her heart breaking as Marcus positioned himself to cover her escape. She reached the back door as the cabin erupted in gunfire. On the motorcycle, she looked back once to see Marcus silhouetted against the muzzle flashes. A dark angel fighting demons with his own hands stained in blood. Then Volkov's voice cut through the chaos, amplified by a megaphone. Touching display, Kane, but pointless. We already have what we came for. Celeste's blood turned to ice as she saw the second team of men emerging from the trees behind her. She'd been so focused on Marcus's fight that she'd missed the trap closing around her. The bonds, Miss Ashworth. Volkov called out as his men surrounded her. Or watch your lover die slowly. In the cabin window, Marcus had gone still. Their eyes met across the distance, and she saw him mouth one word, run. But there was nowhere left to go. The warehouse smelled of oil and old blood. Celeste hung suspended from chains that bit into her wrists, her designer clothes torn and dirty. Across from her, Marcus was tied to a chair, blood trickling from a cut above his eye. They'd been prisoners for 6 hours. Such a touching romance. Volkov paced between them, his gold teeth glinting in the harsh fluorescent light. The princess and the assassin. Like a fairy tale, no? Go to hell, Marcus spat. Volkov backhanded him casually. Your grandfather was smarter than this, Miss Ashworth. He understood that business is business, nothing personal. Celeste tested the chains again, feeling them give slightly. The bolt in the ceiling beam was old, rusted. I told you, I don't know where the bonds are, but you do. Volkov pulled out his phone, showing her a photograph. Your grandfather's study. Behind the Picasso. A safe that requires 2 keys to open. The photograph made her blood freeze. She recognized her grandfather's private study, the one room in the mansion she'd been forbidden to enter as a child. He gave you one of the keys before he died, Volkov continued. A family heirloom, perhaps? Something you would never throw away? Celeste's mind raced to the necklace her grandfather had given her on her 18th birthday. A strange antique pendant she'd never understood, shaped like a key but too ornate to be functional. I see recognition in your eyes, little bird. Where is it? Even if I had it, what makes you think I'd give it to you? Volkov smiled and pulled out a knife. Because if you don't, I will carve pieces off your lover until you do. He moved toward Marcus, but before the blade could touch skin, Celeste heard herself speaking. It's at my apartment. It's the necklace. But I want something in return. You are hardly in a position to negotiate. Let Marcus go. Take me to get the necklace, and I'll give you what you want. But he walks away clean. Marcus's eyes blazed with fury. Celeste, don't. I've made my decision. She met Volkov's gaze steadily. Do we have a deal? The Russian considered, then nodded. Very well, but understand, Miss Ashworth, if you try to deceive me, I will make you watch while I skin him alive.
I'll wait.
An hour later, Celeste stood in her penthouse apartment, Volkov and 2 guards behind her. The place felt like a museum now, full of artifacts from someone else's life. She moved to her jewelry box, her fingers finding the familiar weight of the antique necklace. Clever grandfather, Volkov murmured as she held it up, hiding the key in plain sight. Now let Marcus go. Soon first we collect the bonds. He gestured toward the door. Your grandfather's mansion? I assume you still have access? The drive through the city felt like a funeral procession. Celeste stared out the window, memorizing the lights and shadows, knowing she might never see them again. Whatever was in that safe, whatever debts her grandfather had incurred, she doubted Volkov intended to let her live once he had what he wanted. The mansion loomed against the night sky, dark windows staring down like empty eyes. Celeste led them through the familiar halls to her grandfather's study, each step heavy with dread. The safe sat behind the Picasso, just as Volkov had said. Its dual lock system required 2 keys turned simultaneously. Volkov produced the second key from his jacket, and together they opened the steel door. Inside sat a single safety deposit box key and a letter addressed to Celeste in her grandfather's handwriting. The real prize, Volkov breathed, taking the key. But his expression changed as he read the letter over her shoulder. What does this mean? Celeste read her grandfather's words with growing horror. If you are reading this, then I am dead, and my sins have found you. The bonds were never real, Celeste. They were bait, meant to draw out those who would hurt our family. The real treasure is knowledge, the records I kept of their operations. Use them wisely. Volkov's face went white with rage. There are no bonds. He played you, Celeste whispered, finally understanding. He played all of you. The Russian's roar of fury echoed through the study. His hand flew to his gun, but before he could draw it, the lights went out. The darkness erupted in violence. Gunshots strobed like lightning, and Celeste threw herself. Behind the desk, as chaos consumed the room, she heard Volkov shouting in Russian, his men returning fire at shadows. Then a familiar voice cut through the noise. Celeste. Where are you, Marcus? Somehow he'd escaped. Here, she called, crawling toward his voice. His hand found hers in the darkness, pulling her toward the window. Can you climb? Yes. Glass shattered as they crashed through the study window onto the mansion's roof. Behind them, Volkov's voice rose in fury. Find them. They cannot escape. On the rooftop, Marcus pulled her close. The real question is, do you trust me enough to jump? Below them lay darkness and uncertainty. Behind them, death waited with gold teeth and bloody hands. Together? She asked. Always. They jumped into the night, not knowing if they would live or die, but finally free from the gilded cage that had defined her life. 6 months later, The small cafe in Prague hummed with quiet conversation and the aroma of strong coffee. Celeste, now permanently Claire Montgomery, watched Marcus sketch the cathedral spires through the window. His shoulder had healed, leaving only a thin scar that she traced with her fingers in the darkness of their shared nights. The papers came through, he said without looking up from his drawing. Volkov's organization collapsed after the FBI got your grandfather's records. 17 arrests, including 3 senators. And Volkov himself, still missing, but his empire is finished. Celeste sipped her coffee, tasting freedom in the bitter knowledge that it had cost more than money could measure. Do you think he'll keep looking for us? Marcus finally met her eyes, and she saw peace there for the first time since she'd known him. Maybe, but not the man who's been hunting him for 5 years. That man died in the warehouse. Who are you now? Someone who paints sunrises instead of nightmares. Someone who loves a woman more than he hates his past. His fingers found hers across the small table. Someone who wants to build something instead of tearing it down. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. In running from her gilded cage, Celeste had found something her grandfather's billions never could have bought. Love that grew in darkness, tested by violence, and emerged stronger for having survived. I have something for you, she said, reaching into her purse. The small velvet box contained a simple ring, silver with a small diamond that caught the Prague sunlight. Claire Montgomery is proposing to Marcus Kane? She is, because fairy tales are better when you write them yourself. When he slipped the ring onto her finger, she felt the last chains of her past life fall away. They were no longer the princess and the assassin, the heiress and the criminal. They were simply 2 people who had found each other in the wreckage of their former selves. So what happens now? She asked. Marcus closed his sketchbook and stood, offering his hand. Why to disappear? Not because we're running, but because we're finally free to choose where we want to be. They walked out into the Prague afternoon, hand in hand, leaving behind the ghosts of Nathaniel Hayes and Celeste Ashworth. Somewhere in the distance, church. Bells rang out across the ancient city, calling the faithful to sanctuary. For the first time in her life, Celeste knew what sanctuary felt like. Behind them, unnoticed at a corner table, a man with gold teeth watched them go and smiled. The game, it seemed, was far from over. But that was a story for another day. City swallowed them whole, 2 shadows disappearing into the crowd, carrying their hard-won freedom like a secret flame that no amount of darkness could extinguish. In the end, love had been worth more than all the gold and all the cages in the world. The end.